A flouse, Ligaze? Asked Frey with an air of confusion. With his hands still in his pockets, Requiem sauntered over to a bench where a force field was holding many flying white mice. Requiem sniffed and asked, "What, pray tell, is a flouse?" "Well, those are, dear man. To be precise, one mouse is a flouse, and a flock of flouse are flies. So technically, you're looking at a flock of flies right now, and I've lost a singular flouse. Does that help clear things up? Now, where has that rapscallion got to?" Ligaze had the most enchanting English accent. Combined with his smart dress under an immaculate white lab coat, he looked as though he belonged in 1920s London. Urasil was keen not to touch anything, and sought sanctuary in the biggest open space he could find. As he stood there, minding his own business, something warm and wet ran down the side of his face. "Yuck!" he cried as he wiped away the liquid. "Ah, well done, old boy. You found Trigger. Come here, my lad." Ligaze cupped Trigger in his hands. Thrusting his hands into the force field next to Requiem, he let go of the escapee flouse and popped his hands back out. "I don't get it. Trigger?" asked Gio. With a cheeky smile, Ligaze said, "Oh, it's because he's a little trigger-happy on the old fecal excretions. Not too handy in this kind of gene-knocking experiment, I grant you. An incontinent flying mouse, but you can never tell these things." Gio distanced himself from Urasil, whose look of shock now seemed permanently etched into his features. Requiem strode over to Ligaze, hands still in his pockets, and, as he mockingly mimicked his accent, asked, "I'm still not too clear how these flies came into being, or why, old bean. Can you help me out?" Ligaze cleared his throat and proudly explained, "Let me illuminate and lift the fog of confusion you find cast upon you. As you must all be aware, we're all pretty much like every other human being. However, we Akatsuki have a few extra genes that lend us the ability to interchange matter and energy. We can basically take the arrow of time, bend it into a boomerang, and tell physics where to stuff it. We call it conversion. Are we following me thus far?" "Go on," said Requiem tentatively, not entirely understanding Ligaze, but not wanting a more detailed explanation of the one he had just had. "Right. So we are trying to isolate the genes that make us, well, us, really. We want to answer questions like, are we all born with equal abilities? Why can some do more than others? What gives us the ability to unravel matter, channel energy, and twist this universe to our will? And ultimately, why, if we all have this power, can so few of us do anything with it? And so on and so forth." "And the flying mice help how?" asked Requiem, now more confused than ever. "Well, we thought we had discovered the gene that enables flight. What this gene does is produce ion channels all over our skin. By controlling the amount of ions in and around our epidermis, it allows us to create a field, which is the same polarity as the Earth's gravitation field. In physics, as often in life, opposites attract, but like for like repel. Just like when you try to put two north ends of magnets together, so you float. To test this theory, we isolated the gene, knocked it into some mice, bred them, so all their cells constitutively expressed the construct, and observed what happened. Interestingly, in the mother's womb, the fly started to float, and she spent most of her time with only her two front legs on the ground." "Wow, good going, Ligaze. So does this mean we can all fly?" asked Freya in awe as she tapped the force field holding the flies. "Well, that's the big question, isn't it? A tricky one too, as it happens. As you can see here, the flies can't control their power. They float permanently, and boy, do they love it. Feeding is tricky, and, well, you've already witnessed the sharp end of waste disposal. But examine their heart rate and hormones, and you can tell that they are having the time of their furry little lives. This lack of control, however, has led us to believe that we have other genes allowing us to turn this effect on and off. Early research shows most of us have the ion channel gene and the transcription factors to activate the gene at the very least. We believe that most have simply not consciously gained control of it, and that the subconscious is keeping our feet firmly on the ground for safety. We think this is common, to have great power but not realise it. I think many will go their whole lives without realising their potential. Ligay stared into space for a moment, contemplating this sorry state of affairs. Shaking off his thoughts, he added positively, "Well, I hope that has enlightened you as to our endeavours here. If any of you would like to volunteer for some trial work, please don't be shy." "Well, thanks. A very thorough explanation. May have to pass on the volunteering thing for now. Just passing by to get some bits, aren't we, Freya?" said Requiem through gritted teeth as he glanced in her direction. Ligay turned his attention to Uracil. "Oh, by the way, 1 gram of faeces has more bacteria than there are people on the planet. So, you must have the bacterial equivalent of China on your face at the moment. Here." Cheerily, he passed Uracil a neatly folded hanky to wipe his face. "I must say, Uracil, old boy, it is rather brave of you to be venturing here, especially to this building, which is so utterly removed from your way of life. Bravo, dear man, bravo," added Ligay merrily, as he patted Uracil on the back vigorously. "Trust me, it's not by choice. I fear increasingly for my life with every passing second. First jets of fire and water, then flies excrement, and what next? Who's going to up the ante this time?" replied Uracil, with a mixture of fear and defiance in his voice as he wiped his brow. He didn't need to wait long for an answer. 2 pale, gaunt-looking men in black robes and brimless pointed hats peered in through the glass wall of the corridor. Seeing Uracil, they glided to the lab entrance, barring any escape. Freya shot out her hand in Uracil's direction. "Quick, get behind me!" "Ligay, get rid of them!" she hissed. Uracil slid to cower behind Freya, whilst Ligay tried to talk their way out of the situation. "Ah, gentlemen, you are a credit to transmuters everywhere. Fear not, however, the flights are safe, and our brethren are here to provide peer review of the work." Transmuters didn't move. In cold tones, they demanded in unison, "Hand over the West Gate dweller. He has no business here unless he is going to share his genes." As the Westgate people are against science, none have let their DNA be sequenced by the geneticists of Eastgate, leaving 1/4 of the 4 Gates population unmapped and potentially hiding away useful differences. This has only widened the rift between the 2 people, making Uracil's presence most undesirable. Stepping up to the plate, Requiem addressed the transmuters. "He'll not be giving you any DNA today, or any other day, I think, so just move along if you please." One of the transmuters raised an arm and pointed his bony grey index finger at Requiem. "Ah, Requiem," the transmuter slowly echoed. "A donation from you shall more than make up for all the people of Westgate. Now, chaps, I hardly think this is cricket. They are guests, after all," said Ligay defiantly. Without any indication as to why, the transmuters suddenly lost interest in both Requiem and Uracil. The transmuter lowered his arm, and they floated away down the corridor. "Well, I think we showed those ruffians, eh, Requiem?" said Ligay cheerfully, gently elbowing Requiem in his side. "What were those things?" asked Gio as he reappeared from behind a bench. Everyone had quite forgotten about him. Staring down the corridor after them, Freya explained, "You may have noticed that the genetic engineering we have managed far outstrips what the best institutes in the Hafuna world have accomplished. That is because we have an advantage. We have no need for viruses or golden bullets. A few can alter DNA on a molecular level, and this allows them to insert and delete genes and change entire bodily makeups. This is the power that helped isolate and insert the flying gene in those flies. Those that have this power are usually quickly recruited into the ranks of the transmutors. This is so their ability can be used to help our work, but also to control them. As with this great power comes a price, and these people generally start playing with their own DNA, and they become shells of their former selves. Hence, the need to control them, to stop them from doing things to people. Well, thanks everybody. I didn't fancy their method of DNA extraction, though I would have willingly spat on them if they wanted, said Uracil, as he finally reappeared from behind Freya. In a concerned tone, Requiem said, "Oh, I don't think you need be thanking us. I really don't think we were the conducive factor that made them leave, do you?" A cold feeling pervaded the room, as everyone wondered what Requiem could mean. The last time they felt like this, they were traversing the black depths of Talis's grounds. Even worse was the pang of fear that was shaking everyone to the bone. This was nothing to do with the transmuters. Yes, they were scary, but this feeling was new, intense to the point of suffocation. This was not fear, it was abject terror. But dart their gaze around as they might, there was no way of telling why they felt this way or where it was coming from. The sense of fear and despair mixed with pain. Everyone felt a biting cold. Goosebumps could clearly be seen on Gio's bare skin. This was swiftly followed by all five doubling over in excruciating agony as their bones felt like they were splintering. The pain slowly turned to numbness, and they realised that they could not move. They were stuck with fright, but still with no comprehension of why. Gio cast an extraordinary large shadow in the midday sun, except that the sun was coming in from the direction of the shadow. Ligaze did his best to enlighten Gio as to what was happening behind him. "Gio, dear chap," he stammered. "You appeared to be defying physics with your shadow there." Gio struggled to turn around. As he did so, his shadow became three-dimensional, as it rose slowly in front of him. He looked up and up as the dripping, gaseous shadow grew taller, towering even above his great stature. Clouds of darkness flowed from what began to look like large jaws and a head, as words, deep, dark, intimidating words, cut into the room. My, those transmuters can be such a nuisance, can't they? They didn't give you any trouble, did they? I hope you don't tar everyone with the same brush. Power doesn't necessarily have to corrupt. An absolute power... Akuma did not finish his sentence as he appeared from the shadow and took form in front of them. He towered above Gio and struck fear in the hearts and minds of them all. Even Requiem felt paralysed with fear, and Akuma was head of his gate. Finally, Requiem mustered a composed reply. "Akuma, what brings you to the East Gate?" Giving a nonchalant wave as he circled them, his heavy footsteps shaking the equipment on the benches as his long claws screeched against the glass, Akuma replied in a quiet bellow. "I could ask you the same thing, my brother. Added to that, I could ask why one from the West Gate is here. And Fat Gio, I didn't think this department made pies. Ah, but the ever-enchanting Freya. She should at least be in this gate. But why is she in this building?" "Flies," blurted Ligaze. "They came here to see the flies." "I see," rumbled Akuma, turning his attention and his piercing glare to Ligaze. "Yes, your quaint experiment into unravelling what makes us tick. Pray, tell me, do you have the answers yet? Do you know what it is to live? Would you like me to bring your work to a final and everlasting conclusion?" I couldn't help noticing that play on words, Akuma. Very amusing." Requiem sounded respectful, yet strong. but inside he was shaking. His very bones were cracking up. Akuma laughed with sinister conviction. Oh, I do like to play. Games make life interesting, don't you think? Shall we play? He didn't wait for anyone to reply. How about a riddle? Shouted Urasil with unusual bravery. Akuma stopped his rhetoric and, lowering his hand from his mighty stance, he slowly turned, with death in his eyes, to stare down at the timid Urasil. A riddle, he repeated darkly, his bright amber eyes burning through Urasil's very being. Plucking up all the courage he could muster, Urasil replied, Yes, a riddle. I'll ask a riddle. If you get it right, you can have my latest book. Akuma's eyes gave a fleeting flash of intrigue, and if I guess incorrectly... You lose and leave us alone, blurted Freya. Akuma smiled, displaying his shiny, razor-sharp teeth. I think I can accept those terms. Please, present me with your riddle. Urasil stepped out from behind Freya, where he had hidden once again, cleared his throat and garbled, What is open when it's closed and closed when it's open? Akuma scratched the underside of his jaw thoughtfully with a single needle-point claw. He bent down to deliver his answer. His long face cast a shadow that was dispersed by his bright eyes and rows of shining teeth. Westgater, that is far too simple. It is, of course, your mind, he whispered sharply before rising up and bellowing. Although you can give off the impression that you are closed to an idea, really, you are hiding your true feelings and are quite receptive to it. Of course, the contrary can be true also. They call it deception and lies. Urasil stood tall, took a deep breath, gulped, and replied, No, it's a level crossing. It can be closed to traffic and open to trains, or closed to trains whilst open to traffic. Akuma pulled back his clenched fist as he shot into the air, standing tall and powerful. His bulging muscles plunged the room into darkness. Ha! Very clever. Who would have thought that one so against technology would hold such an answer? I give you your victory. Leaning close to everyone, he whispered insidiously, But we will play again, and next time it will be my game and my terms. Akuma faded to black and disappeared. In an instant, the room became bright and airy again. The atmosphere of despair and the feeling of terror ebbed away, and everyone could move once more. Good going, Urasil, commended a heartily impressed Requiem. Why, thank you. Though I'd like to go now before he comes back to toy with us, Urasil replied breathlessly, cold sweat running from every pore of his body. Thank you, Ligaze. You are a good friend, said Freya as she embraced him tightly. To everyone else in the room, the embrace appeared to last for an eternity, as they looked on and wondered just how close the two of them were. Finally, Ligaze broke the silence gently. While still holding Freya tightly, he whispered, As ever, my lady, I am your humble servant. Pulling himself away, Ligaze continued in his more traditional enthusiastic style. Take care of yourself. And these ones whilst you're at it. Looks like you've got your hands full. With a despairing shrug, Freya said, You don't know the half of it. Come on, you lot, let's go. Urasil, looking most confused and disheartened, asked, But what about the reason we came to this hellhole in the first place? Weren't you after something? Yes, and I have it now. So let's get this show on the road, shall we? Replied Freya shortly. But I didn't. When did you... You heard the lady. Let's get going, called Requiem, putting his hands upon Urasil's shoulders and shepherding him towards the turbocharged funfair lift. And thank you, Ligaze. It was an education.